All right there, folks. It is Ryan Walker. I'm back again to help you out with Think Python. That is Unit 1 of LC101. The exercises at the end of the chapters. Back again at it. Here we are here with this series of videos to help you out with the exercises at the end of Chapter 4 here. As always, make sure that you are actually doing an attempt on your own at solving these exercises before you come to these videos for assistance. Watch the videos afterwards if you want some view on somebody else doing the coding. If you want to see how somebody else got to the problem, how I break down the problem, how I comment out the code, what kind of variable names I use, all good resources, and that's what these videos are for. So please do the work yourself first, at least give it an attempt, and I mean, you know the rest. So let's just get started. Chapter 4, what a chapter. Man, this chapter really introduces us to a lot of cool new things that really expand our arsenal in terms of what we can do with our coding. We learned how to import modules. We learned what modules are, how to import them. We learned about how to access code that's inside of modules, how to access the classes and objects that exist inside of modules, how to access the functions that exist inside of modules, how to access all the different variables, all the different fields that exist inside of modules. We learned how to access all that stuff using dot notation, where you import a module, like for instance turtle, and then you call turtle dot turtle to access the turtle function that gets us a new turtle. And so, for example, that is one example of dot notation. We've probably seen dots used before in the code that we've looked at in past classes, or maybe code that you've seen around in other places. And that's what dot notation does. It just simply accesses something from either a module or an object or a class. And we'll learn more about dot notation, start using dot notation a lot more as time goes on. But this is where we got first introduced to it in chapter 4 here, and it's super useful. We also got introduced to iteration for the first time. We started learning about for loops, and we learned about how you can use a for loop to do to reuse code, basically, to do multiple things multiple times. So we could loop through a list of objects. We could say for object in a list that includes pizza, turtles, viewers, and nunchucks. And we can have that for loop print each one of those objects for us. And it can run through and it'll print those out for us. And also use for loops to iterate through a range of integers, starting at any number that we want, ending at any number that we want, and skipping any amount of numbers along the way. And if you want more examples of that, go ahead and head back to the chapter, read over that again. The range function is super useful. We're going to use it a lot. We're going to use for loops a lot. A lot of coding, I'll be honest with you, a lot of programming is utilizing for loops and utilizing some other stuff that we'll see, but for loops are going to be your bread and butter for coding. Almost anything that you're going to do is going to involve iteration at some point. You're going to love writing for loops at some point in the future, I hope. We also learned about a couple other things about the random module. We learned about the turtle module. We learned about the things that turtle modules can do, so that the turtle module can do the things that it allows us access to. The turtle object, that we can use the things that the turtle object can do. About the random module, we learned about the math module. We're going to utilize all of those in the future. Useful modules that give us access to more abilities that basic Python, in terms of just starting out with a fresh file of Python, doesn't give us. So hopefully find that those are super useful, super cool things that those modules allow you to do. Let's jump into these exercises. Let's do number 1 real quick here, because it's real easy. They already have an answer available for us over here, so let's just knock it out real quick. It asks us to write a program that prints "We like Python's turtles" 1,000 times. Then to update the program, to prompt the user for an integer, and then print the same message given the given number. So, right, first, our comments kind of stub out our program to flesh out our program so we can know how we're going to attack it. So we have two obvious things that we need to do. Print the string 1,000 times. Afterwards, we'll refactor to get user input for number of times print. Alright, so there's our comments. They're in there. Let's get started. Let's get in here. We know we need to print the string, so we're going to print the string like Python turtles. That's going to print it one time. Now, you could, if you were a crazy person, copy and paste this 1,000 times. So even if once you get down to 10 here, you could copy and paste that 10 to get you going again. We could just keep going at this all day long to really get going back to 1,000 times of We Like Python's Turtles. But we know now that we have 4 loops under our belt. That's not necessary. Now we can do this easily. So we say for I in range 1,000, go ahead and print We Like Python's Turtles. So when you're using for loops, always make sure that you're doing your formatting correctly on those. You need a colon at the end of for loop statement, indentation of 4 spaces here. You can use tab inside of the book here, and most code editors will allow you to use tab to get 4 spaces. But remember that we want to use 4 spaces always, so make sure that you're getting actual 4 spaces of characters and not just tab return characters. Shouldn't be a problem most of the time, but you have to be careful depending on what coding editor you're using or where you're writing your code. But anyway, colon at the end of the for statement, indent the entirety of the for block, and then it should do everything inside of the for block the number of times that you have specified. Here we use for I in range. We use I as a kind of blanket variable for what we're doing here, which we call iterations. So when we're iterating, we like to use I as kind of a default variable for that. It's kind of coding convention. Sometimes you'll see IDX for certain things. Sometimes you'll see them use I. Sometimes you'll see them use num. Sometimes you'll see them use in. If you're doing a lot of crazy stuff, you might end up using J's and K's. But for our purposes, it doesn't matter what variable name you use here. Just know that if you're going to want to use that variable inside actual function, or the actual for statement down here, you need to make sure that you're naming it something usable, something useful to you. In our case, we're not going to access this variable inside the for loop here, so we don't have to worry about it. So for I in range 1,000, so saying from 0 to 999 inclusive, which is 1,000 times, print We Like Python's. Save it, run it. There we go. Keep scrolling forever here, but we'll just take it. We'll just take it on faith that there's 1,000 of them, right? Okay, so that's easy. Got this first part of the problem done. So I'm instead hop down to this next part of the problem, get this going. So for the refactor, what do we need? What do we need to do? Well, first for the refactor, we need ourselves some space up top here. We need to get the user input. So get user input int representing how many times to print. That we know how to do that. So what should we name this variable? We name it something like print times. That's not really a good variable name. We can name it can't name it max. Max is a third Python keyword. We can name it goal. We can name come up with the name that you want to use. I'm gonna use times to print. That's what I'm gonna use. I've just decided just now. Times to print is the number that is the variable name rather than I'm going to get an int from the user. I'm going to say, hey user, give me int how many like print, and then we're going to set that to times to print, and we're going to print string instead of 1,000 times cited the given number of times. Okay, so instead of what we have here, which is printing it 1,000 times, what do we need to replace in order to get it to print the given number of times? This may be obvious. I'm gonna give you a second to think about it. Not I. We don't need to replace I. I is still fine. We need to edit our range function here, right? We need to edit our range function, and we need to, instead of calling a range of 1,000, we just need to call a range of whatever the user has given us. So we're going to print it up to the number of times that the user has told us to print it. So I can get rid of this comment down below here. Self an empty line at the end of my Python program. That's just good Python formatting, is always leave a new line, an empty line at the end of your program. And check over my code really quick here. That comment looks good. This should work fine. Make sure I have the right number of parentheses at the end of this. It might be hard to see based on the way that I have this set up right now, but there are 2 parentheses at the end of this statement, I believe. That should be fine. And make sure that this is good for I in range. Yep, okay. So let's save it. Let's run it and see what happens. Give me an int for how many times you like to print. Let's just print 13 times. And we get 1, 2, 5, 7, 10, 11, 12, 13 times. 13 times we like Python string. So there we go. That is exercise 1. We spent more time than we needed to on it. I just really wanted to make sure that we dive into these problems, even when they're easy ones, and really consider how we're approaching them. Because if you approach all problems like these easy ones with this methodical way that we're trying to teach you here to approach problems and problem solving, then when you get to the hard problems, that method of breaking the problem down into sub problems and solving each of those sub problems separately, that is all going to help you out later. So much more now. So even these easy problems like these here really do go through the whole process in solving them. Alright, let's take a look at the official answer. It says number of messages. That's a better variable name than the variable name that I use. I'll steal that for my variable name here. Times to print messages. Number of messages is a much better variable name. Shorter and actually kind of more to the point, accurate than the thing that I used before. But whatever. Number of messages and input, they did the same. Try and range methods. Yep, so there should print out exactly the same thing as ours. There we go.